Welcome back to The Weekend. In just 48 hours, Donald Trump's first criminal trial will officially begin as jury selection gets underway in a Manhattan courtroom. Now, we call this the hush money trial, but it really should be called the 2016 election interference case, because Trump is accused of falsifying business records to cover up his alleged affair with Stormy Daniels, which was about to come out weeks before that election. Last night, Trump said he absolutely plans to testify. This after 4 failed attempts to delay the trial over the last week. Joining us now is one of the potential star witnesses in this case, Donald Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen. He's the host of the podcast Mea Culpa and Political Beatdown. He's also the author of Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice Against His Critics, and Disloyal, a memoir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Big week
Good morning. I'll tell you, the nice and cozy table here.
That's another way to say small.
I call it cozy.
Our colleague, Lisa Rubin, has often described the role that you are likely to play in this trial as, yes, a witness, but more of a narrator, more of a tour guide, with other people stepping in, filling in the gaps, documents that will support what you're saying. How do you see your role in this upcoming trial?
Exactly the same way as Lisa. Just because the media wants to portray me as the key witness, I don't care what they call me. That's what I am. I'm the narrator of the story. The narrator of the story that's going to be explaining the documentary evidence as well as the corroborating testimony. You see, one of the things that Donald and his legal team are trying to do is every day it's to discredit me. And they think that that's a winning strategy for getting an overturn of whatever conviction that a jury may or may not determine. That's not the way that you run a trial. Have your own defense. The defense is not to attack the witness, but that's what they think is going to be the successful result for them.
So let's pick up on that, attacking the witness, because it is part of the overarching narrative. And I've made this point, as many have, that a lot of this is to frame a witness like yourself, Michael, as not credible because, okay, yeah, you got in trouble for lying before, so you're going to be lying now. But we know that that's not the case because you've been judged by the court to be credible in this case. How do you think does that square with the jury? Because really, it doesn't matter what any of us at the table or outside with our audience thinks about you and your credibility. It's what the 12 people who are going to be listening, as well as the alternates about you as a witness as you narrate this story. How do you position yourself relative to that conversation?
I position myself as a witness who is not excited. I want to be clear about that. I am not excited.
You're not looking forward to
No,
this.
I'm not. I am a subpoenaed, non-party witness to it. Somewhere along the line, the narrative by the media about Michael Cohen's credibility. You know, a buddy of mine sent me this thing, which was like the bubble of 1,000 lies is popped by one truth. I don't care how the media wants to portray me. He's credible. Whatever happened in the past, whatever I had owned, and the things that I claim I shouldn't have been charged with, is irrelevant in this case. The prosecutors are going to put forth their case. And as Alicia was saying at the beginning, I'm just the narrator. And rest assured, Alvin Bragg and the prosecutorial team over at the District Attorney of New York's office would not have brought this case unless they thought that they were going to be successful.
But Trump wants to put you on trial.
Right. And somewhere along the line, somebody has to inform Donald that he's the defendant in this case. I sat in his seat couple of years back, and I know what it's like. I wish that there was somebody that I could have gone ahead and blamed for everything. It's always somebody else's fault when it comes to Donald Trump. Never his. It's always somebody else's. I'm not the one on trial. He is.
You told Politico, you did a Q&A with Politico magazine that came out on Friday, and you talked about how you plan to defend yourself in this trial as you are, because you know they're going to attack you on cross-examination. And you also said that people should prepare to be surprise. You said, I wish that when people state that you lied to Congress, you do me the courtesy of finishing the sentence. What's the sentence? That I done that really for the benefit of Donald Trump. You go on to say, this is all people know is the headlines, and this is much more than the headlines. I went back and I read the statement of facts and the indictment way back when Alvin Bragg when this first barreled onto our radar here. And he noted in this that AMI admitted in a non-prosecution agreement that they made a payment to the source of a story to ensure that the source did not publicize damaging allegations about the defendant before the 2016 presidential election and thereby influence that election. Is that part of what you mean when we should prepare to be surprised? Yeah. I know you're going to say, I can't say
I'm so
much.
sorry that you took so much time to read the documents, but you're right. I can't answer that. I don't want to risk the prosecutors, the trial and their evidence that's.
Is that because AMI might be? I mean, this was in the public documents, so
right.
We haven't heard a lot about AMI.
We have not. So let's allow the prosecutors to do what they need to do, because this is bigger than Michael Cohen. It's bigger than Simone, right? Where I would love to answer everybody's questions, because, like I said, I think that there are going to be quite a few surprises that come out. When we were talking about a second ago, I would appreciate if people would finish the sentence. And what is the sentence? We're talking about my lie to Congress. And Donald likes to call it perjury. It was not perjury. I never pled to perjury.
Right. You fill in that it is for the benefit of Donald Trump.
It's also what the lie was. The number of times that I claimed to have spoken to Donald about the failed Trump Tower Moscow real estate project. I stated before the Senate Select Permanent Committee on Intelligence the number 3. The true answer was 10. And I say that over and over and over again because I want people to understand. If you think that that's the lie that's going to knock me out of the, let's just say, the good graces of the jury, I think that you would be wrong.
Michael, who, based on your understanding, is the most important witness in this case who is not Michael Cohen and is not Donald Trump?
I think it's everybody, because I believe that everybody's testimony corroborates everybody else's testimony.
So more specifically, what do you think Hope Hicks has to offer?
Again, I don't want to go into what I believe is going to be some substance of the prosecutor's case, but Hope Hicks is a corroborating witness, just like all the others, just like David Pecker, just like...
How about Madeleine Westerhout?
Madeleine Westerhout. I believe.
Do you know Madeleine Westerhout?
I do. She was the gatekeeper to Donald's office when he was president.
The thing that strikes me about all of this is the other little subtext conversation in the politics is, the Democrats are coming after Donald Trump. These are all Republicans who are going to be witnesses and speaking, people in his direct orbit. How does he manipulate that narrative so successfully? What is it in the sauce that people are taking in that they think, that some actually think that this is all a setup by the Joe Biden White House, even though this began long before Joe Biden became president?
So the term is Donald deflection. That's what he does. He deflects. He knows that he weaponized the Department of Justice against his critics, myself included, with an unconstitutional remand. So what does he do? Deflect it, push it off. It's the Biden administration, right? They're weaponizing the Justice Department against me, right. And so on and on and on. It's the same thing over and over again. Poor Donald the victim. He's now being, the target of the Biden administration, and people start to repeat it. It's very Stalin, right? All you repeat the lie again and again and again until ultimately the lie becomes the truth.
So what does it mean then to have a Hope Hicks come on the back end of that lie, right? Trying to make it the truth, to come in and go, oh, no, that is a lie. This is the truth.
Sure. It means the same thing, for example, as David Pecker coming in, who has been involved in the catch and kill schemes going on over 2 decades before Hope Hicks even knew Donald Trump. So it all corroborates one another's testimony. It all corroborates the documentary evidence. You see, he knows what's coming at him. It's not like he doesn't know what documents are going to be used. It's called discovery, right? And it's all turned over despite, of course, the Southern District of New York's blunder, right, with 100,000, documents, none of which really has any relevance, which, again, delay tactic. But what you end up having now is, Donald knows he can't win on the documentary evidence. And so what does he have to do? I remember in moot court, I had a professor that used to always say, if you can't dazzle them with your brilliance, baffle them with your BS. Mm-hmm. And that's what he's doing. He's trying to muck up the water so that there's a chance that he can get maybe something on appeal, or maybe he could interfere with at least one juror to get a hung jury.
We mentioned it a little earlier this morning. We had former Congressman Joe Walsh here, and he noted that he wishes this case wasn't the case going first. This is something that is regularly, discussed across the country. Definitely here in D.C. Oh, there are other cases that are stronger. This is not the strongest case. We laid out at the top of this hour that it's been called a hush money case, but this is about election interference, covering up the fact, concealing these affairs, right, because Donald Trump allegedly didn't want it to come out before the election. What do you say to people that say, again, this is not the strongest case, sans about not talking about your credibility, but just the facts of this case, that people will not care about payments to to an adult film star?
What I say to them is, number one, why are we now handicapping cases? This isn't the Kentucky Derby. This is our democracy, right? Why is it? Sure, I will acknowledge that the January 6th insurrection is a more grotesque abuse by Donald Trump of the law. I'll acknowledge that the same holds true for the Mar-a-Lago documents, the top secret documents that he would not return, and so on, and his understanding of the Presidential Records Act is completely absurd. I'll acknowledge even that the Fani Willis case may be more grotesque. But let me assure you and all the viewers that if it was you in this specific case, we'll call it the campaign finance violation case as opposed to the hush money case, though the president and the porn star certainly has a better television ring than campaign finance violation.
It's getting a Lifetime movie for sure.
It sure does. You would be already charged. The case would have already taken place, and you would be incarcerated. So if we really believe that we're supposed to be a country where the law applies equally to everyone, which I think we all acknowledge it really doesn't. Right. We're not even a two-tier system of justice. Right. We're really three tiers. There's, for all of us, the average people, then there's those in power, and then there's Donald Trump, who seems to be able to skirt the law whenever he wants and however he wants. I don't acknowledge what these folks are saying, and as far as I'm concerned, whatever holds him accountable, I'm okay with.
That's good. It works.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.